Good evening. It's December 11th, and this is the December business meeting for the Hatfield School Committee. I'm Christy Boudreau. Thanks for joining us if you're catching this later. We're going to kick off as we call to order with public comment. And I just want to say off the bat that the Hatfield Elementary PTA was so on top of everything, and they have some stuff to share with us tonight. And my intent was to put it on the agenda, and I completely blew that move. So we're going to hear from them in public comment. And as sort of an exception to our practice, if committee members have questions for the PTA on their topic, we will open that up. So with that, I see Jen. Are you speaking with us tonight?
I am.
Wonderful.
As president of the Hatfield Elementary PTA. Thank you, Christy, for allowing us to come on and speak. And thank you for everything that you guys do for the schools and our kids. Very much appreciated. I just wanted to reach out. We have already discussed with Ms. Petra, but the PTA has purchased a new Gaga ball pit, and it was recommended, and I'm gonna switch over and just read. Our PTA liaison recommended that because it's playground equipment, that we officially request that we go to the school committee and donate it officially to the school and ask that the school district accept the donation so that it is under the school's liability insurance for the purchased equipment that will be on the play structure, set up in a place where Miss Petra thinks is best for the school at this point.
AKA not next to a classroom.
Just small things. So we greatly appreciate you bringing that forward and understand the protocol. There is not, because it isn't scheduled on the agenda, there's not a vote to this tonight. But I would just like to ask the committee in a general sense, can anyone fathom a reason that they might not accept this lovely gift from the PTA?
I think it would be a very welcome gift.
I am assuming that this is a very welcome gift from our administration.
It is, because it's plastic, it's not wood. And one of the major issues with the previous one was that it was causing so many issues around splinters and bolts and other injuries that students were getting. Also, there's one whole side that's lower because there was also an issue with it being so high. Not our kindergarten students really would, we've kind of banned kindergarten and first grade from accessing it because they just we're not able to safely get in and out of it. So this is plastic. We don't have to have any issues with the wood, and there is one whole section or side that's much lower. So it's, if the ball gets hit out, kids are out, but at least it's easier and more students can have access to it. And it's smaller. It's not as big.
I think it's a wonderful thing. I know all the students miss having the Gaga pit. I'm in no way against this. I totally accept this. I would like to offer to explore what to do with the previous one, the wooden one. That was an Eagle Scout project by one of our former students. And I can be in touch with him and his family to see if perhaps he would be willing to donate it elsewhere. He was also part of Camp Norwich through the YMCA, which is where he got the idea of building a Gaga pit because it's very popular at camp. Perhaps they might want it, but I'll volunteer to look into ways that we can pass that one on to perhaps a more appropriate audience than our younger elementary kids.
He is more than welcome to do that. Absolutely. I will put a little plug that if for any reason he would like to repurpose the wood and think about how to partner with some of our families and or to make a shed that we could use to store more of the gardening equipment and tools that we're going to be trying to do. So that was an idea or thought. I had wanted to make sure that we weren't just getting rid of it. It's
Mhm.
actually stacked up nice and neat, ready to be repurposed. And that could potentially be something if you were interested. But
Well, he's in the
But yes.
Marines now.
if you
So
can find
if
another
he'd
school,
like
then
it to
great.
stay in Hatfield to benefit
Yep.
Hatfield, which was his intent
Yep.
in the beginning, great. We can move forward with that. If he is strongly feeling he wants it to be a Gaga pit,
Yeah,
we can look into
absolutely.
that. But
Sounds great.
I'll reach out to the family and get some feedback for us.
Sounds great.
Yes, Miss.
Just a quick general question. Is there a time frame that the PTA was
That's my next.
thinking about?
We actually have already purchased it and we were waiting for the weather to cooperate for
Yeah.
us to set it up safely. So it's secured in the ground.
Okay.
But it's all, I'm probably using the wrong word, but it is plastic, PVC, everything as part of it. And I was gonna work with Miss Petra with the location, but we're waiting for a warmer day to set it up.
Okay, so realistically, was the hope of the PTA like springtime or like warm winter day?
We were hoping sooner than later, a warm winter day would be ideal to get it out so the kids could use it.
So we could call an online meeting and have a vote. We
I
just
don't
need
know
to
how
get it.
time sensitive things are.
I think we
Right.
probably have enough time if we want to do that.
Okay.
We could just have 3 committee members commit to showing up to a posted time, take a vote on it, and then they could install.
Yeah.
Is that a solution?
That's fine.
So sorry.
No.
So we're going to get it approved. We're going to do it quickly. It's going to take us a few days because we got to post it. So thank you, Jen. I'm looking at you, Jen, like I can see you. I know I'm looking
It's
at you on the
very much
screen. It's a
appreciated.
little surreal here.
On behalf of everyone, thank you guys
Oh.
for helping out with it.
No, I think we're all thrilled to have a Gaga pit back. So thank
Kids will
you.
be, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Wonderful. Okay. Is there anyone else here for public comment, either in person? In person is no. Anyone online that would like to make public comment? Okay. Thank you for being here. So with that, we will move on to mission moment. Does anybody have a mission moment they want to share? Okay, Connor's hand went up
That's
first, so
fine.
I have to call on him.
That's okay.
I would just like to share that we have been conducting interviews for the position of Dean of Student Support. And on that committee, we have 3 students, 2 middle school and 1 high school student who have just been phenomenal. Every candidate has said that they have been impressed by the student presence, that they've really represented our school very well.
Sorry, did you say how many candidates you had or?
Oh, I didn't say.
Okay.
I said we have 3 students who are on the committee.
What's your timeline look like on that?
We are interviewing this week, finishing interviews this week, and hopefully having a decision or next steps toward the end of this week.
Principal Petra.
So a few months ago, we had our first taste testing from some of the food that we had grown in the in the vegetable garden area, which happened to be the basil. So I had worked with student council, and this time I met with our newly elected student council, who were 4 brand new members, or 3 new members. And they 100% on their own, after just me kind of like going through and remembering how we had done this previously, we just tasted Brussels sprouts. So Mr. Halpin prepared the Brussels sprouts, and the kids actually even came back and said, we were shocked at how many kids actually do like them. So many students managed to try them. We had like 74 students said yes to liking them. About 54 students said no, they didn't like them. And 22 said that they were not really sure. But overwhelmingly, it was quite the excitement on Friday when 4th, 5th, and 6th grade apparently couldn't get enough of them. So
is Mr. Halpern issuing a Brussels sprouts recipe to go home with the
that I don't
newsletter?
know, but I can tell you that we'll be definitely planting much more of them next year. They
How
did
were
really
they
well.
prepared?
They were steamed. or
And they
baked,
still like
boiled.
them.
Yeah. I know.
Even better.
Mine eat them roasted.
I like Brussels sprouts when I'm steamed.
Yeah.
Many of the students were like, "Is he going to fry them?" I'm like, "I don't think he's going to be frying them." But anyway, we could experiment with more ways to definitely
Roast them
prepare
in the
them.
oven.
But they were a huge success on Friday.
Nice.
Write that down.
Yeah. So are we to get them to eat more vegetables?
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
Anyone else? So I had a chance to see part of the all-school meeting that was a week ago, 2 weeks ago,
Mhm.
very recent, and I'll try to share the story without getting all emotional, but it was really sweet. Our principal was on stage with the student council and having a really, do you want to talk about it?
But what's fair is not always equal.
Mhm.
Sure. So one of the things that I have done in the past in classrooms is a lot of the kids don't understand that, some kids get different work in front of them. Maybe some kids get a chance to take a walking break or have a break card. And kids are like, I don't understand what that is. That doesn't seem fair that some kids get to do certain things or have certain things. So I have gone into classrooms and I basically kind of dress up like I'm a doctor. And I say, well, I'm going to be a doctor and I'm going to show you how the understanding of what's fair is not always equal. And I call students over and I say, what's wrong with you? I have a headache, here's a Band-Aid. I have a cut finger, here's a Band-Aid. I broke my arm, here's a Band-Aid. And then I ask how I did. And all the kids are like, you were horrible, you were terrible. You only helped one person. All these other things needed something different. And I said, exactly. But it was fair. I gave them all the same thing. So it's a good way to kind of get that idea across that what's fair is not always equal. So I said, your teachers have a really challenging and difficult job. There are so many of you and you all learn in different ways. So it's their job to understand and to give you the things that you need. And sometimes that doesn't look the same, but that's okay. So that's what I did.
That's a great message.
It was a great message and it was really well executed.
Thank you.
So I was proud of our school.
Thank you.
So anything else? Nope. Okay. So moving on, is there anything that needs to come off the consent agenda? Okay. So that's approved. The student representative report will go for next time?
Yes.
Or did they?
No, our student representative is playing basketball.
is
as we
on the
speak.
court.
Yes.
Great. And so with that, we will jump right into our deep dive on student support systems and the presentation of that.
Yes, so the administration prepared today for today a discussion about the overview of student support, but then as a deep dive, what exactly we do in each of the buildings. So to kick us off, Dr. Bremner is going to.
We created, I think it was with Connor and Mr. Buckland back in the day, a couple of years ago. We wanted to update a flow chart of our processes, and we've been able to keep this for the last couple of years. So there's a hyperlink in here, and this is something that's been shared with all staff multiple times. And it's true for both buildings. Some of the how they look are a little bit different in practice. So the principals will talk about that. But overall, we really are anchored in our building support team process. And this can be for any number of reasons. So if we have a student who, maybe there's an academic need of some sort, or a motor need, or a speech need, a social emotional need, an absence need, any number of things that are just kind of rising to the top. We enter a building support team process, and this is done through assessment data and staff referral within the building, but parents can also refer to this process. And then we also have a mechanism for an acute event. And an acute event may be a one-off tragedy in a student's family. It may be an updated medical scenario. It may be a behavior that was unexpected. So any kind of acute event can also trigger this process. And we folks follow this in general, that there's a BST, which is the building support team. There's forms and processes to trigger that. The administration, both principals, review these requests. The BST team meets together, and that can look a little different in each building, and folks will talk about that. And then we create some sort of plan. And this may be related to relooking at our tier 1 supports, looking at fidelity, double checking if there's if the teacher has everything they need or a parent has everything they need. It may be a tier 2 support or a tier 3 support. And so we look at those systems, and throughout this process, we're always looking at fidelity. So if we come up with a plan, say it's increase weekly communication with the family. We'll check to see, has that happened? What is the evidence that has happened? And then have a mechanism for progress monitoring. Is the concern improving? And if not, we might look to a referral to special education. We might discontinue the services. We might go back to the drawing board. And if it was a tier 1 or tier 2 support, try a tier 3 support. So that's the general building support process, which pulls in the multi-tiered systems of support. And then for referral to special education, which continues on to the next page, again, parents can request evaluation at any time. We may have the building support team request this. There may be some screening that indicates that this is needed, or we may have an outside evaluation, and we go through that process. And when we meet, we think about eligibility, and we may refer to an IEP, refer to 504 plan. Massachusetts is really great in a way that we have a district accommodation plan, which is unique to Massachusetts. That's not, I think we may be one of the only states that has that. And that's for students who don't have a disability, but they have a known, learning need or best teaching practice that really is something that is a best teaching practice. It's applied all the time, but for that one student, it's really important. And kind of post-COVID, particularly like breaks and frequent reminders and things like that, we've needed to make sure that those are in place. Or we don't come to a plan and we continue the BST process. So there's additional notes underneath related to each of these types of plans and connection to the laws there. So this has been in place for several years now. And then the other hyperlink to start is that the assessment schedule, which we've gone through previously, I think at our last meeting, actually. So Connor, do you want to talk about BST
Sure.
at Smith?
So at Smith Academy, the BST meets, Building Support Team, that's what BST stands for, meets once every 7 days. So our schedule rotates through, it's a 7-day rotation. So a day 1 might be Monday 1 week and Tuesday or Wednesday the week after. So we meet on a day 3. So every 7 days through the rotation we meet. And we have representatives from administration. So that's myself, Dr. Bremner comes as well. We have guidance and guidance counselor there for scheduling questions, class questions. The adjustment counselor is there. Special education is represented. School nurses there, and teachers, when they have input, are included as well. So it's a pretty broad team. It can and it's a pretty comprehensive team to support students across whatever their needs may be. And while I went through the process of it, we pull from a lot of different kinds of data. iReady and MCAS we have talked about, but more, I would say more, I don't know about important, but but probably more focused for the BST is we rely a lot on teacher assessments. So if a teacher is seeing kind of a change, a drop in someone's, typically averaging Bs and all of a sudden they're in the C or D level, and that's a change, that would be a trigger for this process. Okay, we're seeing a change. Or someone's presenting as more sleepy in a class that they are typically not in. So it can be, it's not strictly academic. It can be behavioral. It can be kind of mood dependent. So it's relying on teachers to use their professional judgment to say, hey, I'm noticing something about this student, and I could use some support with them, or I think this student could use some additional support that we're not giving right now. So any teacher or adult in the school, we've had teachers at lunch who have said, hey, I've recognized that so-and-so had been sitting with this group of students and now they're not. I don't know if something's going on there or if we need to provide additional support, socially to that student. So any teacher can be in the classroom, out of the classroom, or adult in the building or out of the building, including parents, can report a student to the building support team. The typical three broad categories we see are academic, emotional, and behavioral. In addition, towards the end of the quarter, we'll also take a look at students who are at risk of not performing well, so we can see if they need additional support toward the end of the quarter to get their grades up where they ought to be. And basically, the role of the BST is to provide and to brainstorm together to come up with plans to support individual students. It's hard to say, this is what a plan looks like, because again, it's very individualized. And so for one student, it might be a plan to contact home to talk about sleep if this student is all of a sudden really tired in the morning, or it could be hey, we noticed that this student's academically underperforming. So we set up a schedule for them to come after school and during the academic tutoring blocks to get extra support in those particular classes. We do use support across the different tiers. So tier 1 would be for everyone. So maybe in class, a student sits up front. If maybe they had trouble seeing the board, maybe that's an accommodation that we're using for that student that we would do for everyone. Maybe they're paired with someone who is better at taking notes so that they can share notes after for studying, things like that. Tier 2 might be things that we offer for everyone, but are a little more differentiated. So our teachers stay after school once a week for extra help, extra support. So every teacher does that. Every student has access to that. We have the academic support center where we pair students who may have indicated a need with peers who have excelled in certain areas. We've had limited success, I will say, in full transparency, in getting that to really take off. I remain hopeful that we will get it to really take off. Similar, we're looking at introducing a kind of a peer mentoring program for, if it may not be academic that we're looking for, but maybe social. We have check-ins with specific teachers. So someone has a teacher that they've identified as a core person that they feel good with, and they can check in with that person if they're having difficulty. And then we get more involved at the tier 3 level. We may refer a student to an academic skills block. A lot of times we see those written into IEPs in the middle high school, where we have, the student is really struggling in math, on developing those math skills or the study skills around a certain academic discipline. So they have a scheduled class that meets to work on those skills. If a student is demonstrating that they may benefit from those skills, but it isn't, it's not written into their IEP, we might still say, okay, we're going to try the skills class out and see if it in conjunction with other things helps to improve performance. We also are lucky that we have a partnership with River Valley, the counseling service, not the cooperative. And we routinely refer students to that to get extra support built into their school day, but clinical support for therapy. And then, as Dr. Brenner said, we sometimes take a look at things. and say, wow, we really would really like to get a deeper look at, the student's learning profile, and we may refer to for academic testing. And that's
Just a quick
yeah.
question. Or do you want me to wait till the
Let's
end?
hold our questions and then
Okay.
get at the end. I'm jotting notes as well.
Thank you.
So at the elementary level, we have a Google Sheet that teachers would complete. Classroom teachers can complete a BST form, but so couldn't reading intervention or the math interventionist if they're also noticing that there's progress that's not happening that they think that should be happening, to fill out, and so we can all meet. Generally, we meet once a week, every Tuesday, and it's always myself and the counselor. We always invite the classroom teacher, and then that classroom teacher might also request additional support, meaning they might want the speech teacher there, or one of the reading teachers, or the math interventionist, or one of the River Valley consultants as well, if it's a student that they're seeing as well. So we meet and then invite these additional staff members to attend. In the 22-23 year, we had 67 students that we met on for BST. Again, like Connor said, these range from attendance to academic to social emotional to speech needs or requests. A lot of those students, we sometimes will end up having multiple meetings on, meaning we always try to have an actionable step. So after we've met, we always tried some type of, there's always some recommendation for the classroom teacher. And then we wait anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks, and then we'll come back and reconvene. Sometimes we'll, again, set another action step, check in on that, whether or not that's been making good progress. If it has, then maybe we decide that the student is doing what they need to be doing. If not, then we might suggest another tier 2 or tier 3, or possibly invite Dr. Bremner in and possibly have a conversation about a referral. There were a total of 7 referrals last year from our BST process of those 67 students that we met on. This year so far, we've had 8 students scheduled through January of our BST. So again, we look at the way that the BST form is filled out. Teachers have to comment on what they've been doing for tier 1, tier 2 interventions, and then we schedule them out so that we can meet on them.
So obviously, a key component to this process is the tiered systems of support. So I hyperlink the Department of Ed's blueprint. They call it a blueprint, but the guide that they have provided to us. We have provided professional development in both buildings during the 21-22 school year, last school year, and this school year. This has been in whole and small groups. And additionally, individual staff have attended professional development related to either tiers of social emotional learning or executive functioning skills, any additional areas that they're thinking about. We have a number of human infrastructure folks and systems for tier 2 and tier 3. So at the elementary school, we have 2 reading interventionists and a half-time math interventionist. We do have a literacy coach that comes in, and that's partially through Title I. And we do have our pyramid model coach, which is federal, has a federal grant funding, and that's early social emotional tiered support that we've had in the preschool and heading into kindergarten. At Smith, we have the middle school enrichment block. So we have the teachers that support that and the X block assigned tutoring that Connor was talking about. In both buildings, we have a contracted autism specialist, a contracted BCBA, as needed social emotional coach, and that is through a DPH grant that Jean has gotten. We also have after school tutoring with general education teachers in both buildings available, and special education and related services staff in both buildings. Some curriculum infrastructure that we wanted to highlight that automatically provides differentiated levels and embedded progress monitoring is the Lexia Core 5 and the iReady reading and math. There just some background around when MTSS became the norm, and so I provided information here that really by about the year before COVID hit, it was the norm across most states, having shifted from an RTI model, which is response to intervention, which only focused on academics and did not include special populations like students with disabilities and English language learners, where MTSS does, and also includes the requirement to extend learning for those who are considered gifted. On the next slide, you'll see some background on how DESE has, the Department of Ed in Massachusetts has really doubled and then tripled down on MTSS. So we had the blueprint that I hyperlinked previously, and then after the pandemic, they provided us the accelerated roadmap, which essentially was a reiteration of the MTSS blueprint. And then since that time, they also have released the Coherence Guidebook, which looks at deepening learning, and that was shared with staff at the one of the opening days this year. And that combines MTSS and instructional design and systems development. And in thinking about instructional design, Michael has had the collaborative work with us on using understanding by design as a framework. And so we are doing that, focusing on ELA across the district. And we've had a number of meetings with our coach through the collaborative, looking at that. So I just wanted to highlight how we are aligning our professional development and practices with the newest iteration of MTSS, which is that coherence guideline. And just to highlight a component of the understanding by design, when folks have lesson planned in the past, we really think about like what kids are doing. And so the slide that talks about a learning plan, the what kids are doing is actually the last step of designing. And we really need to start with thinking about the standards that are being designed and how we're going to assess learning, and then identify how we're going to teach it. So I gave some examples here of how this could look at Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. And then thinking about the vital components for all students, we have a number of regulations that we manage. The first is child find. And so we've described our BST process, our building support team process. Another is the screening and benchmarking that we do. Connor talked about the grades, particularly in the upper elementary as well. The value that we really give to our expert teacher observations, and looking at the expectation of what progress should look like. And so we've talked about in previous data, in our last data discussion, we talked about where students should be starting and how much growth they should have by mid-year and by end of year. And that family communication, those are all pieces of our child find. The next is least restrictive environment, which is LRE. And this is for students with disabilities that are on an IEP, this particular regulation. And these are things that we're talking about wanting to increase their time in the general education classroom. And part of that is really looking systematically at our lower tiers, at Tier 1 learning. And so to Melissa's data of the number of students referred to the BST process last year versus this year, we have continued to expand our Tier 1 learning opportunities. And so we're able to meet the needs of more students in Tier 1. And then FAPE is a free and appropriate public education. And that again applies to students with disabilities, and making sure that with or without modifications, they have access to an education that provides them adequate progress. And we also want to make sure that even if they are in a tier 3 for a particular thing. So even if they are pulled out for specialized reading, but they still access grade level content. So they're still gaining vocabulary at pace with their peers and being able to access as much classroom content as possible in addition to their specialized instruction. So these student supports, it drives the individual plans that we have, as we were talking about, but it also drives system plans. So what we've described when we look at why are students referred to BST, and what do IEPs show? How many students are receiving this service or that service? We're able to make systematic adjustments. For example, a significant shift in our literacy plan the past couple years. And that really was driven by this process and seeing how many kids were receiving tier 2 and tier 3 reading intervention. We need to make a shift back to tier 1. And the other, we wanted to be able to progress monitor more closely. So we purchased the iReady and Lexia so that we can, at any given time, really pinpoint where a child's performing on those curriculum. So those are just some examples of some systematic pieces, and it drives budget as well. It has helped inform the use and targeting of grants for mental health needs, hiring of staff, designing programs. So it works for individual students and then the broader system because that will support students.
So I know we've held our questions. I'm sure everyone has some. Everybody want to jump?
Do you want me to start?
Sure.
I was just curious how each time that you go into a BST meeting, about how many students are you bringing to that BST?
That was my question.
It differs by building, because it's different styles. So Connor?
Yeah, so at Smith Academy, we put a whole list together. Some of the students might be new referrals, some might be check-ins. If someone's on, a plan, we might check in with them 5 or 6 times. But I would say typically we go between 5 and 8 students. And again, some of those discussions are short. How's Connor doing? He's been making progress. He's doing well with this. Okay, great. We'll move on to Melissa. And we just go down the list. Other times the conversations are longer and we'll develop a plan at that point. But I would say, 5 to 8 students in general, we'll get through in one sitting.
We will look at aggregate lists as well. So we look at the F list,
Mhm.
something that we'll look at. Those kids may have already been on the BST list. They may not have been, but we'll look at that.
Yeah.
Like we kind of hyperlink that list.
And I will say, having been both at the elementary and secondary setting, the needs are typically slightly different. So when we're at the high school level, we're typically not talking about speech. We're not talking about OT or PT or things like that may be more involved, or fluency support, the things like that. So the breadth of one discussion will typically have a narrower scope.
Typically, it's 2 or 3 students at the most. We usually spend anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes per student.
And then you're just rotating teachers then. So
Yes, correct. So we do this on Tuesdays specifically because Mike April has a 45-minute block of time or 50-minute block of time. So basically he goes in to cover. So as soon as that one teacher is finished, he then leaves. He knows what the schedule is. So he'll go into the next classroom to cover that teacher so that teacher can come to my office and participate.
and then I was wondering, is a referral to the BST team the same or different than a parent referral to special ed?
Very different.
It's different.
Mhm.
And then I was wondering, what is a rough estimate of the breakdown between how many parent referrals are you getting versus how many school-based referrals are you getting to BST?
I don't personally myself, I don't receive a lot of BST referrals. We have invited parents in the past to some of them, but we don't typically, but they're more than welcome to attend. Generally, it's the teacher who's just looking for some ideas. They're feeling like either progress is stymied or it's plateaued, or they're really concerned about the speech aspect and are really needing some more support around if this is something that should be a referral versus is this something that I could potentially be getting some ideas. A lot of times we end up asking the classroom teacher to do anywhere, again, like a 4 to 6 week, if you can do 5 minutes or 10 minutes a day, and I'll give you something and the speech teacher might contact the family and say, here, I'm going to give this to help you at home as well. And then we end up reconvening and the speech teacher might say, yes, I think we definitely need to move now to maybe more of an observation and a referral versus the student and the teacher both have been feeling like this is working out really well. It's no longer an issue. So it
And the
depends.
parent referral piece for the elementary school, it does come through, the actual referral often is from the teacher, but sometimes there's been a lot of times there's been a conversation with the parent beforehand. So, I have this concern, just want to let you know, I'm asking that our building support team look at this, or we're trying to encourage at like parent teacher conferences, if there's a need that's coming up, or I think this might make sense to refer to the BST process. So there's generally, yes, the teachers at the elementary school are most referring, but there's oftentimes some kind of queuing discussion with the parent, with the teacher.
That was going to be, my next question is kind of when in that process are parents informed that their child is being brought up at a BST meeting? And that would be separate than like the letters for tiered support
Yes.
that we've talked about in other meetings.
Correct.
Okay, and then
So wait, but I want to hear the answer to that, and I don't feel like,
Yeah,
so
same.
speak to a little bit how, when, and what parents understand about a BST. And that's probably different per building.
So at Smith Academy, again, it's a range. So there are some students who we as a staff will sit down and say, let's try this, see how it works. It works great. And we might not even send a notification that we know in class where we've asked Connor to sit in the second row rather than the fourth row. There are some that we have a conversation, and to the last question, I've had 2 what I would consider parent referrals since I've been at Smith Academy, and those have both come from conversations with a parent where they'll contact the school to express that they're concerned about a student. And I think that's one thing we could do a better job of, is promoting that we have this internal structure, because in almost every case when I've talked with a parent about this, there has not been knowledge that that the structure exists. So I think we do need to do a better job of pushing that information out there. There are some students that we have invited the parents in for the BST meetings. Specifically, we do that when we have BST meetings around particular behavioral concerns. We'll bring parents into the process. We'll notify them, obviously, if there's an incident that it's in response to, and we'll bring them into that process. And we found that helps, everyone stay on the same page, and the student knows that everyone's on the same page as well. But if we, if it's moving towards a referral, we would certainly have involved the parent in much earlier in the conversation. Or if there are what I would consider tier 2 supports we're putting in place. If we're recommending after school tutoring, if we're recommending the academic support center, or if we're recommending a skills block, anytime there's any substantial change to a student's schedule or to a student's, what their daily routine would look like, we would absolutely include the parents in that. Typically, we wouldn't necessarily contact home if there was just a slight classroom change. We're going to be, sharing notes with a partner. We're going to be doing that kind of thing.
I think ditto, as far as generally the parents that have been invited to BST and have been participating in BST, it's because they've already had close conversations with the classroom teacher. Again, sometimes our BST invitations to families and parent participation in them has been around behavior, attendance, and or academics. So therefore, it's been a conversation that the teacher has kind of started. It isn't something, and again, I think Connor's correct. I don't think for the most part parents are aware unless they're really needing to be aware because it is a process that they have access to. But if they really don't need it, they wouldn't be knowing about it. So therefore, we should be thinking more about how to better inform families that that's a place for them to go and access if they need. But I do feel like I think our teachers who are accessing it and needing it are sharing that information with families.
And I think our specific language can improve because I'm thinking about particularly medical information. So at Smith Academy, most of the time, if there's a concussion protocol in place, we bring up that child at BST. And so I think, we may use terms of, we'll let the team know, we'll let the teachers know, and we're actually using the BST process to do that, but we might not use that actual phrasing. So, typically if we're gonna let the team know, we'll discuss it as a team, that means this process. So
That's a good point.
So if I may, because we all know I'm irretrievably concrete and practical about some things. The BST process can be initiated by parents. It's not usually because they don't usually know it exists. It's most often initiated within the building. And parents might be notified that the BST is discussing their child, but they might not be notified depending on what is being discussed. Versus a special education referral that requires parents to sign consent to discuss special education with about their child.
correct.
Okay.
And the special education referral would also sign consent for evaluation, which is a component that's not part of BST.
Right. It's not evaluative. It's more a discussion.
There are opportunities and times where if we asked like our autism specialist to possibly go in and do an observation, they generally would get consent from a parent to do that. So again, so if we have a question about a student and we're really worried about and or are looking to get more information, then yes, parents are absolutely usually 100% involved with that because we need them to sign a permission to say, yes, it's okay for this person to go in and do some observations.
And we have had it where when we reach out to parents and say, Connor's struggling in math, we've recognized we'd like to offer him a skills block during this time because we think it would be better. We've had parents say, we'd rather not do that, which is fine as well. But that, because again, any change to routine would require that notification and consent.
And the BST process is available to all students. So if they're already on an IEP, if they're already on a 504, so to your point around written prior notice, we'll have
Or any kind of notice.
Any kind of notice. But if they're already on a 504 or an IEP, the conversations at BST are around, let's look at their accommodations, make sure that they're all in place. Sometimes we may have a consultation available as needed in additional information. And that's when we're like, it's needed. Let's do this. And so that's already been signed. And then we can just follow up through that process.
The last question that I had was, can you explain the Title I literacy coach? Is that specific to EL learners, or can you explain? No.
No, that's the guided reading consultant that comes in.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Kathy, I think you had some questions.
Yeah, I'm still kind of on the BST, sorry.
Yeah.
Jen asked some of the questions that I had. One of the additional was, do you feel you have enough time? Like Melissa, you said, your conversations could tend to be longer and you have a 45, 50-minute window where teachers have coverage. Do you ever feel that you don't have enough time to continue this week's BST talks? Like Connor, you said maybe 5 to 8 kids. Well, you have a week with 9 kids this week for whatever reasons. I'm just hoping that you are supported in having enough time to do these that you feel is adequate.
Yeah, I would say it's not uncommon for us to need more time. And in that case, typically it would be one or two of those students who we really need to have much deeper conversation about. And so we might reconvene a smaller team. So say it's a conversation about emotional support. So that might be that myself, the adjustment counselor, and the classroom teacher meet separately, the day after, and set up a time to do that. So we don't let things go unfinished, but we might table a conversation for a breakout group or a smaller group to make sure that conversation happens, but doesn't necessarily, kind of take over the process for all the students on the list.
That's good to hear.
Part of why the teams are at times so large is because we're really looking at the whole child. And so more often, I've found in addition to what Connor said, when we've needed extra time, it's because we've identified missing information. So where we think we have an action, but we really need to double check with the parent on the reason why they've been out for 4 days or whatever it is. Like, there's some kind of additional information. It may be, do we have a release to talk to our RVCC? We think they're working on it. And double check that. Or do we have a release to talk to that doctor? Or do we have a release to talk to this other person? And then that's our action point to get that last piece of information and then re-meet as soon as possible, which is, like Connor said, within the next day or two.
So in addition to what Rebecca was saying and Jen was saying, I think the BST is a great thing, but I think we need to do a better job in promoting it and demystifying it for parents. I wouldn't want parents to develop any negative feelings about what they're talking about my child. I didn't know about this, which would be a very defensive reaction after the fact.
Versus, hey, we have this amazing program so that no kid falls through the crack.
Exactly.
Did you know they meet before quarterly grades just to make sure? Like, there's a lot of benefit that we may
Yes.
not be getting out there.
I would love to twist that a bit and put a more positive spin on it so parents aren't afraid of this, worried that, what are you seeing? What's wrong with my child? What are you trying to, keeping them in the loop. They're part of this discussion all the way through. And while I support as a team, this is the work that you do, just looping the parent in, hey, this is something we do, and we might occasionally, find issues that we want to just flesh out a little further to see if they're warranted or not, and can be no big deal, and it might be something more that we'll look into with you. So just,
I think understanding the benefit that the students get out of
Yeah.
having these meetings will help frame that.
yes, without putting the parents on a defense that something's happening without their knowledge.
And the core piece of the BSTs are, what do the adults need to do, right? Like this, it's us checking in for best practices amongst each other.
So I have some questions on that front. I don't want to jump
Nope,
ahead of the
that was
queue.
the end.
You go ahead.
Okay. So you talked about feedback, or you talked about PD on this, because obviously if the teachers aren't well informed, this doesn't work if they're your primary source of information, right? So I'm curious what the feedback has been about the PD for BST. What are you hearing from the staff? Did they feel confident in this? Do they feel like they have the tools they need for this to work well?
Well, out of curiosity, you were asking earlier about the amount of time. I think at this point, the time frame seems doable and it seems more manageable. When I look at the running list of the amount of BST meetings that I had last year versus this year, I had 27 in the time frame from now until January, where I have 8 this year. So
what's that shift?
that shift, I think, ultimately is that our teachers are more understanding of what they need to be doing to best support kids. So therefore, they're not feeling as much of a need to come to us to say, I need some more heads around the table to think about how I can help with X, Y, or Z. I'm thinking.
So do we have, is there some other metric that helps us understand versus, oh my gosh, this is a really big headache. I don't want to put anything in there because then I'm going to have an extra meeting. Not saying that, I don't think that would be the case. I'm just,
I do think that, in terms of a factor of time, the issue is that there could always be more time for a more systemic approach to the strategies and approaches that we need to use to help teachers, on a regular basis. That's where we need to have, more time. I would commend the fact that, we have added more time for our ESP staff to get trainings, which is really helpful because they're another person in the room, another educator in the room. So that's, I think, helpful. But that's where we need the time, and to better organize it so that it's connected to what we're hearing in meetings like this and IEP meetings and so forth. Because I think our staff might say, we don't have enough time or we're not getting the PD we need to really drill down the way
is that
you're
what
asking
they're
us.
saying?
I
Do we ask them what they,
We have not surveyed them in a more formal way. I know we haven't after our PD session, so
okay.
that's something we could do as well.
I would
think
say, if I may, from Smith Academy, there are kind of two camps to this. So that in terms of specific PD around BST, it's a process. So typically it would just be in a staff meeting, an item agenda. Hey, this is the BST. Most of us are familiar with it. If you're new and you need familiarity, we'll talk to folks about that. Here's how you do it. Here's who you talk to. Here's how you refer someone. So it's not. I mean that PD isn't really, it's not training. It's here's a process that exists. Here's how to do the process. I think part there. I don't know if confusion is the right word, but when MTSS was being rolled out by the state and we were doing some training with MTSS, there was some confusion, I guess, about the different tiers, and the training that we did and the conversations that we had at the secondary level really were around, here are all the avenues that we already have within these tiers. This is stuff that we're already doing. Here's how we're doing it. So when you're talking about tiered support, this is what we're referring to. We're, if someone is coming routinely after school for extra help in English, that's a tier 2 support that exists. So if you're talking to parents and you're talking to BST recommending that they come for those supports, not only are you going through the process, but you, even if you hadn't been using that language, you have initiated a tier 2 support for that student. So a lot of the work that we had to do was around clarifying what was already being done, which tier it fell into, and kind of using that language in a more standard way. So it aligned with what the state was asking us to do, if that makes sense.
For feedback, I agree. We need to do a better job on surveying post-formal PDs. I will say at Smith, a couple years back, we were hearing that what happened at the BST wasn't being communicated enough to the whole team. So we've really taken care in our BST notes who's communicating it out. So we made that shift based on feedback. That was a real specific piece of information that we adjusted. And that seems to have improved the path since we made that shift about a year and a half ago or so. So that was more in kind of qualitative feedback at Smith, I know.
That ties into another question. So I'm just, who's responsible for the fidelity checks? So you outlined part of the process was on fidelity checks. Whose responsibility is that?
So it depends on whomever that item was assigned to. So for instance, if it was that the plan is that the student would attend science after school tutoring once a week, we'd ask that, we'd check in with that science teacher. Has that child for the last 4 weeks attended science after school tutoring? Or if it was speech check-in that way, or if it was an assignment to the teacher that
So just
during
comes
morning
back into
meeting.
the next meeting.
Yeah,
Yes.
the next meeting, we
Okay.
rotate through.
So the process essentially manages that.
Yep.
And you talked about viewing things at a systematic level,
Mhm.
because that's obviously a lot of what we need to be looking at from a budgetary standpoint in particular. What is the process? How are we able to view things? What is it? How are you tracking all this such that it can be viewed at a systematic level?
So we each analyze our own parts of things, right? So for me, I run reports throughout the year on how much OT service we have or speech service we have on IEPs or 504s. In leadership, which we meet as a leadership team weekly, we'll talk about different trends that we're trying to focus on at that based on our agenda for that leadership meeting. So for instance, like when we are working on our budget, we're running different reports of our own selves on how that, whatever topic we're looking at. So it really depends on our specialty, but each of us have our own systems for running reports and looking at data on that.
There's no common system.
No, there's no, I would say there's no common system, but it happens in a common fashion. So with the leadership team, if trend, because trends may show up that we didn't anticipate, and they might not fit into the here's this particular system that works. I'll give an example from that we're working through right now is when we looked at some of the iRate MCAS data, we say, okay, here are those gaps that we're seeing. How can we fill those gaps? And part of that came in through the BST, but it's not really necessary. The BST is student specific, not system wide. And so then we have taken time at staff meetings, PLC time, as well as those half-day release days to really dive into that data and say, okay, as a system, where do we want to improve in our students' ability, or what trends do we see, first of all, with our students' learning, and how can we best utilize our time in the classroom, outside of the classroom, to help support them in these specific areas that we've identified, and then with the staff develop that. That's where we are now. Develop those systems to help support students at that spot. So it really does come from the data that we've seen, and takes that took a slightly different approach, or we took a slightly different approach to making that a more standard practice.
An example at the elementary school of sort of melding the minds. We were identifying that 4 through 6, we needed to increase our tier 1 vocabulary instruction and part of that was at the middle school, we were seeing 7th and 8th graders on special education testing scoring low on spelling and their essay writing on when they were doing their 3-year evaluations. So I was seeing that at the middle school, which the elementary team didn't have access to. Additionally, we had the speech pathologist identifying, this overabundance of language needs at 4 through 6. And then the reading specialist talking about the piece that was holding up kids in the upper grades moving along on the DRA was content or key vocabulary. And so by pulling in, are we all set? Or?
I'm just trying to make sure that we can get the meeting back in view. We just didn't need the slides in front of us to listen.
But so that's an example of from a leadership team. I was bringing in information about 7th and 8th grade special education spelling and essay writing scores, and elementary speech and language needs. We had a reading specialist talking about vocabulary needs, and looking at MCAS scores in the upper grades as well. And that led us to purchasing, Making Meaning in the upper grades for this school year. So that's an example of when we pull it all together at leadership, when we can identify a more systematic issue.
You said making.
Oh, sorry.
Quarterly
word.
wise.
Are you
Another
done?
question?
I
Go ahead.
did. I'm sorry, a couple more things, couple more questions were out of yours. So when we're looking at I'm looking at the building support team process. So kind of from assessment data or parent referral down to where you're entering in to tiered supports, about how long on average is that process taking?
It's very rapid.
Take one meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. And then if you are putting in one or multiple tiered level of supports, then it goes into kind of progress monitoring 6 to 8 weeks.
Yes.
And then we talked a little bit about the PD for teachers. So I'm just wondering what do you think is their proficiency right now for understanding this process and the different levels of tiered supports and how they support students in their classroom of kind of navigating through this process?
It varies by teacher, and we support them through their student and professional learning goals that they have as part of their evaluation process.
Yeah, I would say at Smith Academy, it varies as well. I think there's a high level of proficiency with the implementation of supports when we have supports that are for each student, that's being done. Those supports are being put in place. I think if you sat down with individual teachers and were to kind of quiz them on tiered levels and where in the tiers those fall, we might be able to reinforce that language to be more consistent. But I would say in terms of the process of referring someone to BST, as well as putting those supports in place, there is a high level of proficiency there as well.
Because it's hard to gauge from the conversation of like how long has this been an initiative? Is this sort of like within the last couple of years, like there's been like a PD initiative, or is this been going on for the last 5 to 10 years?
Yes, and so not all of us were here 5 to 10 years ago. It was something that this team identified in that post-COVID year, the 21-22 year, as something we needed to get back to and practice. I think there was an understanding of interventionist roles and what special education was. But in between, there was some clarification that was needed. And I think the COVID drift, right? Like MTSS was brought up a couple years before COVID happened. COVID happened, everybody did what they needed to do. So we got right on it that year that we returned to tighten up these systems.
Yeah, I mean, to my recollection, like the MTSS sort of push to initiate that further was post-COVID, but we were using the BST process during COVID pretty extensively,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, and I believe prior to as well. I know
Yeah.
from previous districts that that system had been rolled out. And I believe it had been rolled out here as well. But the kind of the formal MTSS, like that piece
part
became it wasn't pushed nearly as much pre-COVID as it has been post, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's making sure that teachers understand that not only are they responsible for tier 1, but they might also need to be responsible for tier 2, and that they are providing for some students tier 2 intervention. I think they were doing that, but they didn't realize that they were doing. So
The vocabulary to some
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
And to be fair, the state used COVID as not an excuse, but as a chance to say, hey, here's the tiered model. that, we want everyone to be following, and we're gonna double down, triple down on this is the language to be used, this is the process, these are the processes to be used. They took advantage of that in a very significant way.
It's built into the on-ramp.
I think that, and we've talked about it before, I think that that's where some kind of ongoing professional development tracker for who's had the professional development and who hasn't would be would be really important, because the people that are sitting around this table seem to, they change pretty, it changes, right? So it's hard to know in these conversations, when you say it's different for all teachers, of course it is, but it's also then hard for us as a committee to know, well, who's had the PD, what has that PD entailed, and then who perhaps, needs more training in it. And it does feel like in sort of my time on the committee, this shift, and Molly, you've talked about it a couple times, this shift of, leveraging the time and teaching the skills in tier 1 to tier 2, 3, so that the reading specialists aren't having these unmanageable and large caseloads. But I am concerned, right? We're a small district, so you have to make sure that you're feeding those tiered supports as you're pulling those kids out of special ed, so that everyone's getting their needs met. And so I think that that's also too where the data dashboard will be really helpful to kind of look at data as we're moving forward to make sure that we're hitting all of our targets as we continue that work and move in that direction.
Yeah,
I was like, because one of my last questions feeds into that a little bit, which is, how are we doing at monitoring our staffing levels based on what you're seeing in these meetings? So, I mean, I can't help but notice we talked about, we have 2 reading specialists and half of a person on math, when I can look at our math scores and it would, as my only data point, would suggest perhaps we need more math support. So what does it look like? And are you seeing as a team some need for shifting in terms of what we have on the support we are able to offer on our staff, be it outsourced by contracting or in-house?
I think part of it is, again, looking at it systemically, is trying to get a good curriculum in place so we know that our tiered 1 is really well-grounded and in place, and making sure teachers know that they have the supports to implement that first. But that's sort of the next step, is then to look at, is that making a difference? That if it's not, we need to have other staff available to do the tier 2 and tier 3 for math, especially, for example. And not just at HES, but also at SA.
So are you guys undergoing that conversation right now so that it feeds into the fiscal 25 budget conversation?
We're looking at the data for math, especially.
Math and or anything else.
Yeah, but
picking on math at the moment.
But math, because that's the only curriculum right now that we have really a systemic approach. So it's a really good one to base it all on, the good data that we have been collecting for the year and a half.
The other piece is just the day-to-day allocation of staff. For instance, and Sarah's on, we knew that first grade needed some handwriting support. So she's in as tier 1. That's just what we're doing this year. We prioritize that in the schedule, and that's how we're doing it. Last year, that group needed, because we were combining classes and things like that, we had a reading specialist running some of the groups. So really looking at what is just within our classroom milieu and how we utilize and allocate all our resources in a wise way to really target those needs. Melissa and I have been talking about speech, our speech numbers. We've added in this vocabulary component in the upper grades. but we need to really look at the lower grades. We're having a lot more kids be referred and need like articulation support. And so we were able to have our speech pathologist utilize a specialized program, Linda Moodbell Lips, sound cues to have the classroom teachers be able to do that in Tier 1 with the Tier 1 Foundations program that we have. So giving her the time to be able to do that so that it can be supported in Tier 1. So I think it's a combination of, yes, is there any adjustment from a person standpoint, a budgetary standpoint, but actually making sure that we're allocating our current infrastructure in a more targeted way.
And at the middle high school level, that conversation is, I would say, less about staffing, hires, and that kind of thing, and more about scheduling. So, okay, we have this group of students that maybe we run 2 classes of intermediate algebra as opposed to algebra 2, or whether depending on who we have available. If our paraprofessionals are typically working with individual students, but if there's a block of the day where we know that support's not needed, and we have the ability to have that paraprofessional support in a math class or an English class where there's demonstrated need, we could do that to facilitate smaller group work, that kind of thing. So this is the time of year where we start looking at schedule for next year, even though it's only December. And we look at numbers, we look at data, and we look at where we think those student groups will be as we start putting schedule drafts together. We get that committee together to do that.
Any last questions? This is a big conversation, but it's a big topic.
Every time I started to ask one, someone else said it.
I had a lot of stuff I'm like,
Yeah.
covered. So
Yeah.
thank you, all of you, for diving into that, because it's something I don't think, I will speak for me. I didn't know all of that. I think it's helpful to know that. I think there's some huge positives in all of that maybe we're not getting credit for. And
Or we're not
there's-
like leveraging those in
Yeah.
a positive way.
yeah,
Because I think that's like a strength of Hatfield,
Yeah.
right? Like we have these small class sizes and we can tailor things to the individual. So for proactive.
this is like
It's like-
the piece beyond that. This
Right.
is like, hey, they actually sit down and make sure that they're using those small class sizes
Nobody
to the
knows.
benefit of every single kid, because
And if you think about numbers, if we get 5 to 8 students per 7 days over the course of the year, with our enrollment, that means pretty much every student gets a conversation about them, which is great.
we're looking out for every student, talking behind their backs.
No.
No.
Just be mindful of how we think about how we just like share that. That's awesome. In light of the hour and the information we just went through and having some written reports, I just want to check in with the committee. Do you want to have individual reports? Would you like a chance to ask questions about the administrative reports?
I know I had at least
I
one
might have a few
question.
questions, but maybe is there anything that you guys want to make sure you highlight out loud?
Ms. Boudreaux, I just wanted to identify that the linked update that was there originally was not the one for December for me, so I fixed that link. So if there, it's currently correct. So if there was questions on the previous one, it was the one from November.
When did you adjust it?
At the beginning of this meeting, when I went to click on it and saw that it was the November one.
Oh,
I went in and fixed it the other day.
I know you were, I don't know, sorry.
I can't pull it up because every time I pull it up, I get an error and it won't load.
So I just wanted, if you had a question, it was last month.
So no, I pulled it up this afternoon off the agenda and it had a meeting date of 12/11. So it might just be that.
I think
Does it
it's
say
yours.
December 2023?
Well,
This one.
one of my questions was for you. So if I ask that quick little
Okay.
question,
Yeah.
we'll know if it's for last month or if it was for this month.
Yes.
The question was about that you and Michael were talking to vendors about something to track.
PD tracking.
Yep,
right?
that was
That's my-
that was from last month. So
That was from last month?
yep,
Meeting date says 12/11 on here,
I
though.
don't
Okay.
know, but
Okay,
um,
that's from last month's, but hey, let's ask.
sure.
I'll ask it anyway because I didn't ask last month. Is that a product or a contract? Is it a product that we can purchase and then have and use? Or is it some support or service that we're going to utilize through somebody else?
So it's a product that we already utilize part of what they offer. So the Teach Point is the platform that we use for our teacher evaluations and observations. Michael and I met with them to look at their PD offerings and tracker because we currently use GCN for our required PDs at the beginning of the year. So the restraint information, mandated reporter, civil rights, harassment, all those things that are needed every year. Chicopee has switched to using TeachPoint, and I heard a presentation about that this summer, knowing that we use TeachPoint for one piece that they do. Michael and I met with them, and we talked to Connor as well, so we'll continue that conversation because that feedback about the tracking, the PD tracking, we don't have a way to do that right now. And it looks like fiscally this will be comparable to that GCN that we purchased separately, but because we already use this platform for the evaluation, fiscally it looks like
Just
adding
a
this
little
will
bit.
be a reasonable thing. So, and
And,
it looks really good.
and would it be able to track, to the conversation we were having with Jen, all the other things?
All of it.
All
Yep.
of it.
So it will be able to track what our required ones are that we assign, like we do for GCN. It will be able to put on, like, so if Melissa's doing, XYZ PD for faculty meeting, that can be created and folks assigned to that. If Jenny, sorry, you're here, goes to, something at the collaborative and she's the only one that goes, she can add a thing on there and have it track
What's my
that.
next question?
So it is very able to be that. There will be on-ramping that we need to do, and we need to continue to vet it out, but it looks to answer that want that
Nice.
I think we all have.
The system as we currently have it, and I'll speak for myself here, is us tracking it, and I miss things routinely where we have a 3-hour staff meeting training or a release day, and we do some work, and I remember right before the end of it that oops, I forgot to send the sign-in sheet around, so send the sign-in sheet around. Maybe it doesn't get to every single table in the room, and it comes back to me, and then I have to remember as I'm going through and plugging into my spreadsheet, oh yeah, Connor was here, even though the name's not on there, or I know Connor has illegible handwriting, so I know that's his name, and can plug it in that way. So this system would be a much friendlier way for us to do that administratively, I would say.
And like I said, I know Chicopee made that switch and between those same exact vendors. And I was able to talk to that director about how that went. So I think it's looking pretty positive, but it'll be a decent amount of summer work for the leadership team to onboard that piece. But
I think too that having some kind of if you do if you use Google to do entrance and exit tickets and just feedback on the PD that we could make confidential in some way, it would be really helpful to be getting feedback from teachers on,
Yes.
what information were you happy to get in this PD? What did you not get that you are looking for or that would help you in your practice? Would also be, I think, a component of that would be really helpful.
I see all 4 of us nodding along pretty emphatically at that idea. Okay. Anything else we want to make sure we pull out?
I just want to highlight the work that everybody's been doing in terms of hiring. I think we will be fully staffed after this week. At least all the candidates for ESP will be coming in to fill out their paperwork. So if they do it, we will have it done. We have a candidate for van driver. We'll just see. There'll be some vetting that needs to happen. And we were able to hire a kitchen helper today. So
Nice. Yay. Happy holidays.
Yeah.
And are we taking all the reports and doing all questions at one? and
Yep.
all of that?
Yeah.
We're gonna do them all at once.
I'm just wondering about the school psychologist position, the plan for that moving forward.
Yeah, so Michael and I talked the other day about reposting to gain a little bit more time. So it was meant to be a full-time position. We thought that it would, the candidate we had, we thought would be 1 day a week till Thanksgiving and then 4 days a week. And they let us know that that's, they're able to just continue with 1 day a week till maybe February. So we need to rethink that. So we haven't fully had the chance to talk with the clinical team, but that'll be reposted in some form or fashion in the next week or two.
So the finance committee has previously had conversations about any job that we might have a difficult time continuing to budget next year, that we take a hard look at that before we put it back out. I mean, so to the point that we said, like, we couldn't fill the Spanish position, would love to have had it, couldn't fill it, but let's not repost it, because we know going into fiscal 25 that it's highly unlikely we would be able to carry that forward.
The difference for this position is I have to contract it
Right.
because we have to do these evaluations.
If that's what it's taking the place of, and we know we can find a savings in it, then do, but, or at least that would be my voice. But I think we just have to be really careful about adding staff.
So this position was previously a massive contract that
I
we
understand,
spent
yeah.
every year. And so that's been different this fall. But we would need to go back to that model, which would not be ideal. It's both expensive
and
and they don't know our kids or our systems as well. So Michael and I need to talk about the needs moving forward, having had this position be 1 day a week and what that has meant for our staff, and what makes sense. But we understand to be fiscally responsible with the posting and only post what we need. So
Well, only because we don't want to set ourselves up for trouble. Right. I mean, we don't want to make hard decisions for ourselves as we go.
And then the hiring contract process reopened with the BCBA. Was that the current?
yeah, so we've been able to continue with the contracted BCBA that we've been working with this fall, but we thought we had a potential hiring to change that, and that didn't work out. So we're thankful for this contract that we have, but we also need to try and continue to find a different solution.
Are there not applicants for the work? What's
The big issue with the BCBA position is around the entering private practice. So it's kind of similar to the psychologist position, is folks are in private practice as opposed to joining a teacher contract. And then that poses issues with availability and all sorts of things, but we're not the only ones dealing with those two positions. Are the hardest for all districts right now.
I guess my question is, are you getting applicants when you put it out, or
We're getting interest in applicants, but we're going back to needing a contract. But sometimes those contracts, what folks are actually able to do doesn't line up with what we need.
That part I understand, and I'm here, yeah. Unfortunate. Other questions for administration?
Or anyone?
We're just going to be free for all.
Free-
It's December.
free- I was like, who are we supposed to be
Going
looking
crazy.
at right now? I
Keep on
just was
toes.
wondering, like the 911 phone thing. I know it's been underway for like a couple months, but like
Very
it
frustrating.
concerns me.
Well, it works.
Okay, I just wanted like a little reassurance here. I
911
keep
goes out.
seeing it
That's not
come
the
up.
issue. Yeah, that's not the
Okay.
issue. The issue is
It's like, oh my
our issue is we have two different providers, and
Uh-huh.
that was because of cost, because we were already still under one contract, and if we broke it, it was gonna be cost prohibitive. So we have two different providers. Both allege that it is, according to the law, it works. We've called 911. We've proven that it doesn't work.
Successfully? or-
Successful. No, not successfully.
I-
One vendor is saying to us, they believe that's not the law. And so what we have, it works, and they're kind of fighting us on that. And the other vendor keeps promising us they will look into it, but it just never seems to get done.
Okay, so we have two vendors that play here, but when we call 911 from the school,
It goes to 911.
it works.
It works, yes. It just doesn't tell you what classroom or room office.
The location. Got it.
works,
Okay.
Which is
I
what
know
the
we've
law
talked about it, but it keeps
So,
coming
yeah.
up, but
They
I'm like,
get to the school
feels-
and then they would need
and then they
direction.
don't know where to
Somebody at the door
go.
has to tell them where to go.
And we don't know what to do.
And if that one vendor is having a dispute about what the law is,
Would they have to know which room? Is that the,
can we get a legal opinion to help us?
Everybody, we've already given them the legal opinion. Our IT people have explained it to them that they're doing this in all different schools. And they're still fighting it. We've said, we don't care. This is how we want it to work. And they're just not responding in terms of making it happen.
so what is our next step?
Well, I've got the IT people looking into that piece. I think we're going to have to can that vendor, or, yes, work with another vendor to come in and finish up the job to make it work.
So the workaround that we're doing right now is when we call, do we just tell them where we're located? Or are we sending someone outdoors to flag people down?
Well, depending on what
Show
the
up at
issue is.
building.
Right.
Yes, but
Right.
it's a big difference if they show up at the front door when the issue is in the back of the building at the science lab or something, like.
So essentially, nothing's changed. This has
Right.
been the situation.
I
Right.
know
forever.
it has,
But
I
if
know,
the
but like it just keeps
enhancement-
not
Right.
getting
Yeah,
fixed
right.
and.
So
I'm
they show
becoming
up to the main office, the main office directs them. That's been the same system in place. It's just we're supposed to have this.
Right.
If we're supposed to have it and we've paid for it,
Right.
we should
Right.
be able to have it.
I know it's been, like, I went actually back through many, many months. and
Yeah.
Like, I know it keeps coming up, but at this point, like, we still have 911 problem. Okay.
I have one more.
Mhm.
Sorry. The concert is in previous years. What grades were included in the holiday concert?
My understanding is this is Kristen's second year, and previous to that, I think preschool, kindergarten, and first grade were included. She was brand new right after COVID happened, and because there is some dancing and singing, she has given second grade through 6 is the range. I've had a conversation already that we will fix and amend that for next year. Kindergarten, pre-K, K and 1 will be part of the concert next year. They just are not this year.
I'm just going to ask what, Dr. Driscoll, what is Jolly Ball?
Jolly Ball is volleyball in December. So yeah, it's a
I was
fun.
thinking like, wait, I thought the December dance was called something
I was like,
else.
that's a typo. And then I was like, no, no.
Right?
It's an
That
event.
would make all the sense in the world. No, it's a volleyball tournament, and teams sign up to play each other, and
In like ugly Christmas sweaters?
yeah,
or-
whatever
I hope
outfit
there
that
are
they
themes.
they decide, and is appropriate. And we always have a staff team as well that
Nice.
takes them on. So I'll report out who the winners were.
Please do.
If I can, I would also just like to highlight something that I know has been a hope for a few years now from the community, that we have middle school sports right now at Smith Academy. That's through the hard work of Jason Duncan, really doing a nice job of promoting that. We have middle school boys and girls teams for the basketball season,
Awesome.
which is great.
But it's nice to have back.
Mm.
And you had enough kids come out?
We did, yeah. So we have three. We have varsity, JV, and middle school boys for boys, and we have varsity and middle school for the girls team. It just so happened that many of the players who would have been on JV were also middle school players. So, yep, it's been good.
Wonderful. Okay. Anything else before we close out administrative reports? Anything from you guys that you want to speak to? No. Principal Petra, I will be excited to hear how your lunch trips to Fishtails go. So if you missed that, there's a little incentive to get some iReady minutes going with our elementary school students.
Yeah, I know somebody that's working real hard on his minutes.
I know a few.
Yeah,
Yeah.
97 tickets a week. I've been putting in.
Nice.
So I've been counting
Excellent.
them because of course I have to handwrite each one. So yeah, 97 tickets per week so far.
Let's see if we can get that up. A few
They're
more.
hysterically funny. I've been hearing things like, do they get dessert?
Those are important
These are the
details.
questions. Well, these are important things to kids.
Are we going on prime rib day?
There was a promise of soda, I heard.
Yep.
It was like,
I did.
and
Yes,
the
that's
parents
also
wouldn't
exciting.
know.
Can I highlight, I know, I'm
Please.
talking too much, but can I highlight three community connections? So we had our first intern from the UMass Department of Developmental Psychology join us all fall and has been working with the preschool and the STAR program. And we have two coming this spring as well, and then continued partnership with our OT partners with Bay State to get interns as well. So just we do connect with the colleges to get some interns in. We re-signed our understanding, our MOU with Head Start. We have to do that every few years, so we were due to do that. And so this is a program for early childhood needs for folks that meet certain criteria. And then the other was I had the privilege of working with the Federation, which is the state level parent organization, and partnered with Diane Ellis, who's the director, and Gil Montague, and we presented about having trauma sensitive schools. And I was able to talk about how wonderful Hatfield is and some of the interventions and systems we've been putting in place post-COVID. So just a couple connections I want to share.
Okay, so moving on, the school finance subcommittee report was submitted by Adam. If you had a chance to see it, we miss you, Mr. Sullivan. And given that the transfer wasn't connected to the agenda, you may not have seen it. So I've asked Superintendent Wood if that can wait, and he said that would be fine. And so I was not at the finance meeting on 12/6, but you have it in writing. If there's anything we could need to discuss, we can do that. The key thing coming out of it for this meeting was the bus contract vote. So in particular, you've seen the bus contract. Mr. Wood, how does the contract that needs to get voted on so that it can get posted, how does it meaningfully change from the current contract?
So the only thing that, because I didn't know, I don't know the dates of when we're going to approve it. I just, in some cases, kept the dates. Some I proposed other dates, but the dates need to just be finalized based on your approval tonight. And we'll set up the meeting date for the people to come in and talk about any questions that they have regarding the bids. That would be, now probably the first week of January. And then it has to be posted for 2 weeks. That's the way I understand it. It has to be on our website for 2 weeks. It'll also be on the town's website for 2 weeks. Then at the same time, it has to go to something called Combis. It's the Commonwealth buying site that all bids have to go to. And it will be there for also two additional weeks. And then those bids, as they come in, get put into an envelope. There will be a meeting date whenever we want to. It can be a week after, it can be, but it has to be pretty soon after the deadline. We'll establish that date, and then you'll sit down and go over what the bids were, and you'll have a worksheet to decide how much each bid is worth, and then you'll make a recommendation to, you could do that in committee, you could.
But how is the ask different from what the service is today? Is there anything changing
Just the
in the
dates.
service that we're asking for?
Just the dates.
So no change.
Ask a process question
Sure.
based on what he just said. The date that was chosen is January 11th of 2024. And if I'm understanding, that's the date that the bid goes live. It goes live to our website, to the town website, and then gets sent to the state. Is
It will
that-
change. I'll take another look at those.
Whatever the date is.
Whatever
If it
the
is
date is.
January
Yep.
11th or whatever.
Right.
The process to get it live, does that take several days? Or is it just a matter of, here it is, I'm clicking enter and it's submitted, you know, like,
Yeah, I mean, I've read the website. It should be pretty quick. It may be a 24-hour upload piece, but it didn't say that there was any time delay in the directions.
then I have another question. The contract that was in our packet was the old contract. And I read through it and saw that there was an option, one more viable option of a 1-year,
Right.
rollover.
2 years.
Well, we already did the 1 year and now there's 1 year left to roll over into up to fiscal year 20 through fiscal year 25, I believe, right?
No, I think this
Oh.
was our second.
This was our
rollover.
second
Well,
rollover.
I was confused and I asked Christy about it and then we discovered it was the old contract, so I didn't have the new one to look at.
When we figured that out, I sent out the new contract to
Right.
all of you.
As I review it, it's minor stuff, but there's some editing errors that I would feel better about correcting. And I'm wondering, we have a January 8th business meeting. And if we're sticking with the January 11th date, we could still vote on it on January 8th.
Yeah.
And have it submitted without losing any timeline of this proposal.
Which would allow for all of the dates to be correct
Yeah, the
in what
little,
we voted on.
I mean, there's a number of places, it was confusing me a little bit that, and it's left over from the previous
Right, right,
contract. It's
yeah.
not like, oh, because of now.
Right.
But, I mean, it says school department, it says the school district, it says like all these different things, and I'd
Yeah.
like something to be a little more.
And the updated one, I think I got all of them, but because I did the search, because I realized that too.
And then, as our policy work is moving forward doing, we're trying to correct the pronoun issues
Yeah.
of saying superintendent or his designee
Right.
to changing it to their designee. So, I mean, these are minor things. They're not substantive changes to the contract,
Right.
but I would like an opportunity that we can
Yeah. Take another look at the new one. I
Just-
think I caught most of those as well.
just pretty it up a little bit
yeah.
and we wouldn't lose any time in the posting.
Sure.
The other thing we've had conversations about is making sure that things like posting the routes and that kind of stuff ahead of the school year starting.
There's a date specific that they have to be posted.
Okay, because that is a change from
That
the
is a
current
change from the current
contract.
contract, correct?
So I just want to make sure that we've talked
Right.
about that.
The other thing that I will say that is a change from the current contract, and you know, it's a change and it's not a change. The town has evidently always relied on the school committee or school department to put the bids out for the school buses. And it did not happen the last time, for whatever reason. So that language is new in this contract, that very specifically, we're asking for 3 buses, one of them which will be paid for by the town of Hatfield for vocational services.
I would like to also, in this process, rectify the bills for that, which are not paid through the school budget,
Yeah.
but are paid through the town budget, need to get submitted to town. So we continue to see warrants coming to us for the Smith Voc busing that we don't have any authority to sign for. So
And I've spoken to her, and we can
Right.
make that change.
we'd need to do that. I think I've signed my last warrant for that. I don't have authority for that.
Speaking of a Smith Voc bus, this is calling for a full-size bus. On average, what is the total number of students from Hatfield going to Smith Voc in a given year? Like, is it 30 kids? Is it 50 kids? But I mean, a full-size bus
Is a lot of us.
is a lot of
Yeah.
bus, which essentially uses more fuel. Is there any savings if we ask for?
Well, it's the town's budget. The town probably needs to specify if they want a full-size
Right.
bus or
But
not.
maybe they don't
They may not know. and
know
we
our
can-
numbers, but I mean, this might be a conversation worth having. I mean,
We can talk to them.
to be,
I doubt it would be a cost savings. It really,
Okay.
they don't differentiate in these contracts that greatly unless you go for a van versus a school bus, but
like the half buses or something,
They don't.
no?
they don't really. But I can ask how many they've been transporting, because I know how many we've paid for each year, but I don't know how many are riding.
And you have to plan for how many could be riding, not how many
Exactly.
choose
Yeah.
to ride,
Right.
which is always why we have a little more busing than we use.
We need, yeah.
Right, but if a half bus is 30 students and a full bus is 65,
Right.
And there is any savings, it might be worthwhile to look at that.
Yep.
I mean, even if it's not our budget,
I
it is our
I'm-
budget because
I'm
it's the
fine-
town
I'm
budget.
fine for us being fiscally responsible. I'm just saying, we need to make sure the town is in that loop and not.
Yes. I don't want to decide that for them, but if they don't have the
Right.
numbers of our students of potentially,
Oh, they know.
oh, well,
They're paying for them. They know. Down to the student is my
Okay.
guess.
so
So those of you looking to make some edits, can we just put
Put them on the document.
that on the document
Sure.
as,
yeah, nothing was a content change. It was just some consistency and style changes
Okay.
that I would feel better about.
if it is a substantive change, we can't put it into that. If it's fixing typos, we can do that. But if it's substantially changing what that contract would be, that could be considered deliberative. And we would need to come back and have that as a discussion.
Absolutely.
So just be mindful
And we would have an opportunity on January 8th to do
to have
that.
that conversation. Absolutely. Okay.
I wouldn't have suggested it if I thought it was going to delay posting it and getting it out there in the timely fashion. But if it isn't going to affect things,
No, it would just mean you're going to approve something in March, which still will give you a little window.
which is still the deadline
Yep.
of opening.
Change what you had in there.
Yeah.
Unless you're saying that, hey, if we approved this tonight, it would get posted in December instead of January.
I mean, we would definitely work to do that. I mean, that was my plan, but I don't think March is a bad month to do it in.
It's what was in the old contract, as you said.
Yeah,
The challenge is if the costs go way up and we have
well,
other,
that's it.
like-
I mean, I'm planning for some number of increase, so, but it may be a jolt.
March is not a great time to find that out. How big a deal?
So the proposals, the date,
The-
the date's in here now.
The date, so there are
I'm-
about 6 places that the dates need to get updated to something consistently.
Yes.
Yes.
I feel I would like to make those changes that Kathy was mentioning. I think it's not huge. I don't want to hold up an entire contract over it, but I am concerned about the dates. So if we have a way to resolve the dates,
And the dates would, for it to be worth doing tonight, we need to come to some consensus about what the dates are that are going to be going on to the
I-
contract, because the motion would include the
well,
dates
that's the
of
thing for
that.
me is like I
So
feel
when it
like
would get posted.
in order to really vote on it, the dates need to be.
Agree.
Right, so my goal would be to post it now by the 15th. That was my goal. And then we would do the opening sometime in February. So you'd be able to do it maybe at a special meeting in February versus waiting till your March meeting.
Well, I wished I had known that the intent
Was to post it on
was to
Friday.
post it this week,
Right.
Well,
not a month from now.
I wish it had had the correct dates in it when it came in the packet, but
I mean, as I did scan the correct contract now, it had the date of January 11th. So that's what I was basing
Right.
my review of it on, was that
Yes, and January 11th is.
so if all the January 11th became December 15th, and all of the March 7th became,
30, right there,
well, how many
almost
weeks?
30 days less.
Because you said it has to be 2 weeks on our site,
2 weeks on our site, 2 weeks on combis.
but you said it was extended on combis.
Right, so it's 2 plus 2,
4 weeks.
4 weeks.
So it's a total of 4 weeks.
Right.
and do those weeks include holiday days, or do they need to have additional days added if it's?
Is it business days?
Um,
Hold on. Did we just end the meeting?
Or Zoom just
On
ended.
Zoom?
oh, did you just?
It says the host ended the meeting.
Is it time sensitive?
Or did it time out?
I've never seen it
Yeah,
time
Yeah,
out.
no, me neither. There was no, and I didn't see like a time. Usually we get a warning.
That's very odd.
We're still on YouTube.
Yep. I'll see if I can relaunch that and see what happens.
Okay, so the 4 weeks is how long it needs to be up before we can open the bids.
Right.
So
Because this is.
4
what we-
calendar weeks, 4 business weeks,
Actually,
for
I don't-
like,
I believe it's calendar. I didn't see anything specific about ruling out holidays. That's usually not the case.
want to make sure that we.
We could always give a little extra wiggle room
Yeah.
because of the holiday, just in case.
Well,
But
I mean,
give 3 extra days for 3 extra holidays.
so we're pulling back almost 4 whole weeks if we move it to the 15th.
of,
December.
Wait. So where in the contract now, it says January 11th, we are considering it might be December 15th because that is the day, Friday, that we want to put this out. Okay.
yeah.
And when's your February meeting?
12.
Yeah, that should work out perfectly.
So the March dates become, is the 9th long enough? Of Feb?
Well, the contract says Monday, March 7th, but the Monday in March is the 4th. And if you went 1, 2,
Correct.
3,
There-
4
the-
back from that, that would be February 5th, which would be the week before
But it could be
our Monday.
it could be the 8th or the 9th if we lose those holiday days for whatever reason. Is there anything that needs to happen between that date and the business meeting? Is there stuff that gets reviewed, processed, like,
Well, once all the bids are in, you have to have a public opening day.
which we could do at that business meeting?
On the 15th of December?
Yeah.
not the school committee meeting.
Posting.
No, you'd have it before that.
There's 4 weeks of posting.
Could be a school finance meeting if
So,
you wanted to do that.
Okay.
You'd have a public
I didn't
opening.
follow
Because then
You'd record the
Because those,
values.
that's what needs to come in.
That's what needs to come in. And then you would have, depending on how you want to do it, you either have a school finance subcommittee
Prep
and-
it.
and prep it, review it, make a decision based on all the criteria that you put out in the bid, and then make a recommendation to the school committee.
So in theory, we could do that on February 6th. If we had it come in by the 6th, which is a Tuesday,
Right.
the finance group often meets on Wednesdays, which would be the 7th before the meeting on the 12th.
Yep.
And that would get us decisions a lot sooner for budget purposes,
Right.
which might be really helpful.
that'll get us time to put it in the posting or to be ready for the meeting. Gives us a couple weeks.
Right. So the Feb 6th. So the March dates become February 6th.
And the 4, okay. Sure.
And we can ask for pronoun check.
I think I caught most of them.
All right, so
What if we do vote on this tonight, then
I mean, if we vote on it, we have to be ready for it to be posted
Friday,
Friday.
on.
but we could vote on it pending
I don't know.
the style edits,
I don't know.
or I don't know.
You
I
can,
don't-
I mean, we can put a motion on the table that requests the style edits, that specifies the 2 dates that get updated, and request a final look through before it gets posted. I think the substance isn't, the dates are obviously an issue, and we can ask for a read through before it's posted. But I think the substance of what people are bidding on
That's not
isn't
changing. Right.
what anybody's asking questions about.
Except if that third full bus saves us any money moving to a smaller bus. But
Well, that would be their decision to get the best bid, right?
Yeah.
If they want to, if they think it will, they can do a 28 passenger bus for
Right.
less money.
well,
But
the bid is based upon 3 full-size buses. So
which probably helps us get people bidding. There can be a
that's
point
Too,
to
we're
which
such a
if
small
we
contract
keep
already.
putting things that make it more restrictive for them to bid,
Exactly, yeah.
we're less likely to get bids, period. So I'm not too concerned about saving a few pennies if it means that we lose a competitive bid, because then everybody's costs go up.
Okay, so if we were to vote
Mhm.
on this pending the dates as we have discussed and the request of final read through, if the, how would that work?
We could have any one of us designated to be the final reader.
To go in and read it, and if it's not ready,
Then they say no,
then
and we come back to it in January.
we come back to it in January.
or
Because we won't be able to, we can't do it.
earlier in the meeting, it was discussed that we would
have
do a quick meeting
meeting.
to vote on the PTA thing.
That's true.
And
That's,
Okay.
yes, I
And
already
we were
forgotten.
we were hoping to do that as quickly as possible,
Right.
which
So-
potentially could be next week.
It could
So
Could be
instead of,
Thursday.
It needs to be Thursday, so we could get it posted tomorrow
Yeah.
morning. It could be a virtual meeting,
As long as 3 of us can be there.
as long as 3 of us can show up.
what do you mean it needs
As
to be
long as we-
Thursday?
It needs to be Thursday so that this could go out on Friday.
It could also go out next,
Mm-mm,
why?
because we want to get it in before the business meeting so we don't have to change all the rest of our meeting dates. It would be better if we
We
kept
can
it
meet
tight.
those dates because you built in extra weeks. Well, you did, because if we change it to December 15th and you count out 4 weeks from that, 1, 2, 3, 4 puts us at January 12th, not
I thought there was more than the 4 weeks though.
You said there were
It's 2 weeks with the
town and us.
town and us.
And-
And then that has to continue while it goes to combis
For 2 more weeks.
for 2 more weeks.
So that's a total of
Total of
4,
4
It's
weeks.
only the 4.
which
Okay.
brings us to January 12th, which is still plenty of time
Plenty of
if we
time.
stick with the February 6th date. You
Okay.
still have plenty of time
Okay.
if we cannot come up with a date for Thursday. I'm just saying we have the wiggle room to schedule something
That's
Monday,
fine.
Tuesday, Wednesday of next week to
So
make the edits, and then in that meeting, vote on those 2 things only. And everyone would have a chance to review any of the edits and be comfortable with it.
okay. I'm happy to help
Thank you to the
facilitate that.
PTA for giving us this option.
So please check your calendars for the 18th. Can I get a committal from at least
I'm available.
2 of you and 1 administrator to be online?
I am definitely available.
The 18th is
A Monday, week from today.
hard. Thursday
okay.
is easy.
Jen? Maybe the
After 3:30.
Lots of flexibility at when that could be on my books.
I'm available the entire day at this point. So
Jen, I think you can name the time.
It's going to be virtual.
It's going to be virtual and it's going to be short.
it's extremely short.
Gaga and buses.
And do 3:30.
Works for me. Can I,
Is there
Connor?
an administrator?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
Thanks.
So post for a vote on Gaga, post for a vote on the bus contract.
3:30 PM virtual. And we can invite that as well if he's up to
He's
it.
up for it.
Thank you. I feel better about that without delaying anything. We're still getting
No,
a February.
I want it in as soon as we can because if it's going
Yep.
to have some
Yeah, I
big fiscal
agree. I
impact.
just
I-
want to make sure it goes out.
I hear you.
So
Okay.
that all works out and allows us to make edits with everyone seeing them and being comfortable with that. Thank you.
Go team.
Okay.
Go team.
Policy is ready.
Policy is up.
Madam Chair.
I'm flipping to my policy notes section now. So, Ms. Bench.
Sure. Yeah, policy is met. Policy has been hard at work. We have a couple of proposals with votes if the committee is ready for that. So first on the list, we have policy JLC, Student Health Services. We made some minor style and clarifying edits. And then we have JEB entrance age, which I believe had been mentioned in a meeting previous, but we made some clarifying edits to align with other policies. There's some awkward wording around entrance dates for
Yep.
kindergarten, and we just wanted to align that with our other policies. And we have cross-checked everything with MASC, updating things there. So policy felt comfortable with both of these as they're not majorly substantive changes. So we are open to a vote depending on how the committee, and waiving readings depending on committee feedback.
The chair would entertain a motion to waive readings to approve these 2 policies with small changes. Is there a motion?
So,
Second.
so moved.
So Kathy has moved, Jen has seconded. So these are on the table for comments. I would just like to say, I think there's one tiny little typo.
Oh, tell us.
I cannot believe I caught something you guys didn't catch on that grade.
I'm so
One, I
happy.
do want to say, I think these edits were, while minor, helpful and clarifying.
Yeah.
Thank you. In JLC on student health services,
Mhm.
I believe that the expense incurred as a result of emergency ambulance use will not be the district's responsibility. The responsibility would be possessed by the district. It could be a style, it could be either way. I'm not going to hold up passage, but I'm just asking a question. And I think the entrance stuff makes a lot more sense. Any other questions, issues?
I think the wording we followed on that one was right from MASC's.
think
I
we did
remember.
go- I think we did.
I
go
don't-
We
through
can
it.
leave
I
it
don't
be.
care either way.
I'm not strong.
All right.
So all in favor of approving these two policy updates?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Passed by a 4-0 vote. And then we have a proposal for a second reading and vote.
Yeah, so this is a policy that had been reviewed by the committee for a first reading, and then had fallen off our grid somehow. So the initial edits were pretty messy. So they're not hugely impactful. Most of it was stylistic and to be more consistent with, for instance, use of the word employee
Mm.
to be a more generalized term. But you have a clean copy and an edits copy in front of you, just for ease of reading. We reviewed it again when we realized this had never been formally voted on. We did not have notes about any other major changes that had been requested and did not see any that we felt we
Actually thought
needed.
it got voted on.
Right, we were like, we actually thought this went through, but we went back
To
through
be honest, I thought it had to.
we went through the
Yeah.
minutes and could not,
It wasn't in the
Fine.
minutes.
yes.
Gotcha.
So here it is again. And we
Okay, then.
propose just voting on it.
I would be happy to entertain a motion for that. Is there to approve GCBC?
I can make a motion to approve GCBC.
I'll second.
Great. Any other conversation? These are good edits. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. GCBC is approved.
All right, so the last one that we have forward for what we propose to be a final reading and a vote is IJNDD, which is the social media policy. We've had a lot of, for employees, we've had a lot of discussion about this over the past couple months. So what I have submitted to the committee is an edits document, just a few small edits since the last meeting. And yeah, we're
And-
open to feedback.
The edits that are showing were only from the last meeting.
Yep.
And were suggested by legal.
This is
to-
directly from
yes.
the lawyer.
Those are the
Okay.
only things he suggested changing. And so that's why we feel comfortable in presenting this for a vote.
Has there been any feedback from employees on this? I know there was some interest. Or-
We can let administration speak to it. I have
Okay.
not received anything further. Most of the feedback we got was more around texting,
Cell phones and
communications,
texting.
which is not really covered in this as social media.
Okay.
Have you heard anything else?
That's-
So I have a hypothetical because I want to understand how this would impact or wouldn't impact. So if an employee is sharing information about student behavior that took place in a classroom in our district, but they don't name the student, is that a violation of what, quote, comprises the statutorily protected information of students, families, and staff? So
Mhm.
I would say yes.
Yep.
I would also say yes.
I would hope so.
I. Mhm.
I think because we are so small, and this is what has guided us in conversations in open meetings all these years, is that to even anonymously suggest, yeah, there was this third grader and such and such happened. many people can
Mhm.
easily figure out what that student.
To my understanding, you don't need to blast out a name as long as it's identifiable.
Mhm.
Oh,
And it's information that was gleaned during their workday.
making sure
No,
we are
that-
all of the same
That is my
understanding.
understanding.
Mhm.
And administrators, do you guys have any additional feedback on this or concerns or,
No, it seems very thorough.
so,
We worked hard on this one.
yeah, it was a good conversation.
I am proud of this policy.
So with that, if there is no further conversation, is there a motion to approve? So we would be suspending one reading because there was not, or this is our third.
This
This is
a
the
final-
third, that's
this
right.
is
This is the
third
final reading.
Yep.
So no suspension of any readings. Third and final, no additional edits. It's been through legal. Administration is pleased, the committee is pleased. Is there a motion to approve?
I motion to approve IJNDD, social media policy for employees as presented,
And eliminate.
And eliminate.
and eliminate, what's it, IJNDDR?
Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Policy team knocking it out of the park there. Thank
And
you.
we're already making plans to meet before January.
This was your
Um,
year.
With the,
Okay. So with many successful votes down on policy, we're going to move on to the proposed calendar for fiscal 25 school year.
And this is just a conversation.
This is a conversation.
When is the intended vote targeted for?
It would be good to get it done at the next business meeting.
January.
Yes, because there are parents who have like camp committals and stuff like that,
Mhm.
and those openings start soon. So
Okay.
we want to make sure they know when the school year starts. So I will share with the committee that I took a look at this this evening and went through a couple of things, just lessons learned from past life experience. I took a look at Secretary Gavin's holiday report. Everything lines up completely. So the days that we are mandated to be off, we are off. And I did a little comparison back to the number of half days and such. We are in line with that. Now, this year we did have an additional half day compared to last year, but that's because it was a half day instead of a whole day off right before Christmas. I know there's some concerns about the number of half days. I think that that's because when we taking particularly elementary, when we took the half days this year, we shifted that forward because of parent-teacher conferences. I haven't heard any negative feedback about parent-teacher conferences being earlier.
I've
Just
heard
that, like,
positive.
yeah, quite the contrary, exactly. So, but we just felt them earlier, which maybe felt like more half days than we just won't see as many later on.
If I can add historical context about the half days.
Sure.
Many, many, many contracts ago, the half days were proposed to the teachers to compensate for an adjustment on our daily time. We had to increase our time. I don't remember the exact minutes per day because it was discovered we didn't have enough time on learning. So we had to start a few minutes earlier. And in negotiations, this was the option that was most palatable because there wasn't money to compensate for that. So we initially started with 10 half days, one per month. And over successive contracts, we have agreed that they're valuable and productive, but we've also narrowed it down to what we have here, which is 5, I believe. So
that are
For the-
HES for the
for the-
specific for elementary, right?
yes. And so that is the history of how they began, but that is not what they currently are solving or for. Now they have moved on to being a very valuable piece to our staff.
I would also just like to point out that we have significantly fewer days that kids are released early compared to neighboring districts. I mean, like
Yeah.
a lot. I think I counted 17 early release days for Union 38 schools. It's in that. And they still had half days too. So I'm just good to know. The one thing I saw on here, Mr. Wood, I think that June 24th would be the last half day instead of June 23rd if we needed 5 snow days, because the 16th should be yellow and isn't. So I think you had a copy up, but because we need 11 days in the month of June, and the 13th is only the last day for pre-K and K. I did not see, so the 2 issues that I can anticipate coming up are the question about why start before Labor Day is a perennial favorite parent question. And I think there will be some questions about the fact that the last day of school, sans snow days, would be a half day on a Monday, which I can't imagine anybody's going to show up for except teachers. Maybe.
Oh, no, you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
There'd be a lot of kids.
Kids like that.
They want the last day.
You want to say goodbye?
Fair enough. So, is there perspective from administration on why start before Labor Day? Just have
Well,
that.
it's mostly about, weather-related pieces. I mean, we'll be going into that last week of school with the 5 extra days. And you never know if that's going to be the year that you have the 10 days or something. So, I mean, that's the main piece of it. Usually by that period of time, everybody's kind of getting ready to go back to school. So it works out well. And it's really for
2 little days.
But it's,
Nice
they're ready.
ease in.
It's a nice ease in.
Okay.
Teachers can start getting routines going. So
We're not the only ones in
No,
the area to
it-
do this.
Oh, no.
I feel like it's about half and half at
Yeah.
least.
I'm by no means advocating. I'm
Right.
just making sure we go on the record with
No.
shared reasons.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm advocating because the 29th is my birthday and that's a present. That comes around every now and then, and it's happened multiple times, and I enjoy it.
That's the best self-advocation yet on any of these. So
I'm ready to vote, just for Kathy.
I'd like to talk about those curriculum half days. There was some feedback from the public this year about November, because it happened that Veterans Day and the full PD day fell in the same week, and a comment was made about, I thought we didn't do these PD days or curriculum days in a week with a holiday. And which got me thinking, and the past practice was that we had agreed that these half days would not happen in a month with a full week of vacation. That was the past practice, just because it already felt like a shorter month, and it worked.
So we're really talking about December and February
And April.
and April.
So I just want to throw out some options. And prefacing that, we should get some feedback from parents how much this impacts them or not, from our employees, our teaching staff, on where these days lie, if there is certain work they are doing on these half-days that is essential to happen in December or February or
Can
whatever.
we get the answer to that before the suggestions? Would you mind? If they have an answer to that.
Okay.
So can you guys give us a sense of what's driving when those half days fall before we consider alternatives?
Well,
Spec-
certainly for the elementary, the two of them are the parent-teacher conferences. So
Okay,
that's a
not
big,
looking at October, really focused on just December, Feb, and April.
yeah, I mean, I don't particularly see any issue with what we're planning for curriculum development that they couldn't move. I don't see it.
Totally open
Yeah.
to getting more feedback, but just anticipating if there's any pushback from families about things.
Mhm.
I came up with two possible options. And if it was important in December that there was work that needed to happen before end of the calendar year or the timing of the year before second semester starts or whatever, I'm okay with that one if it has to be.
Right.
That's right, we're not on anymore. Oh, but we're not.
Yeah, she put us through.
Okay,
We're on YouTube.
I would propose moving the February one to January 17th. And it would give a long weekend before Martin Luther King weekend. I would propose moving the April one to March 13th against the full PD day, also giving a long weekend. In the eyes of kids, March is a long month because there's no other holidays, there's no other breakup of the weeks and the whole month. It just, and it's near the end of winter and it just feels like it's dragging. Where April, you have that week's vacation to look forward to. So that's one option of just shifting those two to the month prior.
Sure.
If we wanted to consider moving the December one, it's a little trickier. We would move December to January 17th. We would move February to March 13th. And April, I don't know how this would play out with administration, so that's why there's two options here. I see a notation about moving the half day in May because of prom. When is prom? Do we know?
We don't know yet.
Okay.
But I would love it to be on the 16th.
You would love prom to be on the 16th?
I would love it to be on whatever half day we have in May.
Okay. So my second option would be moving the April half day to either the 2nd or the 9th of May and moving that 16th one to the 23rd, giving a long weekend for Memorial Day weekend. So there would be 2 half days in May on Fridays. Again, I'm just thinking outside the box, trying to spin it slightly different that potentially families would like. If we were to keep them in the months that have the vacations, would it make sense to move like the February one from the 7th to the 14th? So it's kicking off
You get a jump start on that holiday.
on the week's vacation
That's a
rather than
nice
having
benefit
it.
to the calendar this
That
year.
maybe feel like a penalty to staff who have to stay, but
I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to think of different options that work best for everybody, not knowing what each building, which I don't want to disrupt or negate in any way because they're very important. But if they aren't essential to happen at those times, we have these other.
Kathy, I think that part of the challenge, when I heard feedback from the public about that particular week in November, is there was like a lot of back and forth.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So I do appreciate the idea of sort of putting the half days together with others off to make it feel a little bit more like a break rather than a childcare burden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like in one day, back in school tomorrow, but not the next day.
I think
that's
that
harder.
was, and part of it was just like the way the federal holidays.
Yeah,
fell.
we couldn't help
Um,
that.
Like take 2 of the half days and make it.
You can't because you have to add you don't have 180 days
Right.
left.
Thing.
Did you guys run this past the HTA? Did they get a chance to comment
They've
before?
had it, I haven't heard anything, but I can have a specific conversation with them.
If I may, is November 5th another regional holiday,
Yes.
or regional
That's
PD
anticipated.
Yeah.
Yes.
anticipated?
Well,
It's
November
it's a
5th
pretty well
it's a plan.
established
Yeah.
thing.
I'm just
Yeah.
double checking.
November 5th, the first
Yeah, I
Tuesday
know, it's-
is election day.
I know.
And
I'm just making sure that
all the
because
other
again-
districts take that full day off and
No.
do PD.
not
Well,
all, not all of them
well.
do. And I agree, but again, that's something I got a lot of feedback on, like, why are we doing this on a Tuesday?
But as a small
it's
district, that
because-
one's a really big deal because
I'm
we
not
can send,
disagreeing.
I know, no, I'm just saying the reason for it is we take advantage of other people's PD.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I just wanted to make
We
sure
have to share
had,
that more
we had
broadly.
confirmed that. And then the March one is not regional, that's just us.
Yes.
So that one, I wouldn't want to move it if it's already coordinated with other things, but March is just our district. Okay, and then my last question, with the vacation weeks, I know they're fairly well established. Is April, is it usually that?
Yeah.
Okay. Somehow in my head, I thought it coordinated with Patriots Day, but it does not.
It does. It is.
Is it? I thought it
April
was,
21st is Patriots
doesn't-
Day.
Right.
It doesn't coincide with Easter. Coincides
Is it
always
with
the
with
21st? All
It's
right.
the paid
Patriots-
holiday for that Monday.
I just had 9:30 brain on. I thought it was earlier in the month.
So that's one of the things I did was look at when the paid holidays are
Thank you.
in
Yeah,
both that February and April,
I
those
knew
weeks line up.
February was correct. I just wanted to double check on the April Patriots Day. Perfect.
So
So that's good.
if you'd like, I can write up and send you, Mr. Wood,
That'd be helpful.
these
Sure.
things that I've
We'll take a look.
thrown out as possible options, and if you wanted to ask the HTA opinion or
Mhm.
not.
Yeah. Well, and let's have the committee weigh in to sort of thematically. I personally kind of like the idea of having them tip off longer breaks
Mhm.
from a childcare standpoint,
I agree.
as opposed to just shifting them into other months.
That's more helpful.
It's a nice ramp up.
It is nice. Okay.
And again, it feels like a benefit, I think, to a lot of families rather than
Having one
another
random day
random
you've got
day
to
that is-
cover.
Yes, exactly.
I don't, I hear the March feedback like
Yeah.
that. I get. But my first inclination would be
Jenny
have
was
them.
nodding, March is a long month for kids.
It's
Long.
a long month for everybody.
It just feels that way, like it just drags
we-
on.
In theory, we could, if they're rather arbitrary in where they're placed, we could move the December to feed into the holiday. We could move the February to feed in, the
April
April
just
to
move 'em
feed
all
in,
down
and
one
move
week.
a May back, like move one still to tie in with that March day off.
We have options.
I think the December one ramping up will be a difficult one. For
'Cause-
for staff.
Because staff won't want to.
Yeah, everybody has holiday brain.
I don't,
at that
I
point.
feel that.
Maybe the December one goes to March.
A couple of years ago, we had a button down to long weekends, like the Friday before a long weekend. And I know that families really appreciated that and it made sense.
Long weekends or week?
Long weekend, so like a Monday holiday, you'd have the Friday half day beforehand.
Those always felt really nice.
Because it does really many break within a month that doesn't have another break.
Right. If you already have a week off, that's a great week off, and another half a day, to me personally, isn't as impactful as having a longer weekend,
Okay.
personally.
So we're going to bring this back up and we can circulate a couple options so people have it to look at. I think that would be really helpful. Make sure we have like an A, B, C kind of thing on there. And we can all seek some feedback.
Yeah, I'm not like, digging in my heels on this. I'm just reacting to feedback I've heard and trying to think of other ways to present this. So I was just trying to be creative.
Do we have, sorry, because I don't remember, do we have the is there, for next year, will we have after school care available on the half days?
That's something we've been talking about.
Yeah. I think we're closer to being able to do that staffing wise because we have some more students involved that are there, but it's the adult
Correct.
piece.
Right, and I had looked into, and I'd had a conversation with, at the time, the YMCA. And at this point in time this year, they didn't have any available staff to be able to support that this year, but that doesn't mean that I couldn't, if we knew the dates ahead of time, we couldn't see if that was something of a possibility for next year.
That would also be a huge help to families.
Ideally, it really needs to be somebody who does not need to participate in any kind of professional
Right.
development, because then
Right.
we'd be excluding them from that, but.
Sub hires those days?
Hmm?
Have we ever had a substitute that we pay for? Like, do we have substitutes on staff that would, or ESPs that?
That would,
They also do professional development on
Right.
half
Some,
days.
some do.
Yeah.
On some days.
Right,
Some-
it's all over.
One of our main assistant subs already works for after school.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I think we've had enough Smith Academy graduates or current folks
Oh.
coming.
That changes the feedback to the calendar greatly. That would be a good deal. Okay, it's a late night.
Yep.
And we have hit the end of our agenda. I'll say thank you to all. Is there a motion to adjourn?
so moved.
Second? Becca has seconded. All in favor of adjourning? Aye. Thank you much.
Thanks, Jen.